You at the end. Should I end it?
Yeah, it's on now.
No, it's not. He said thumbs up. Listen, don't joke. Do I have to come in at 30 past to switch it off?
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. نويت التعلم والتعليم والتذكر والتذكير والنفع والانتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث على التمسك بكتاب الله وسنة رسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم والدعاء إلى الهدى ودلالة على الخير ابتغاء وجه الله مرضاته وكربه وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى. Alhamdulillah. So yesterday we spoke about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam arriving in Medina and his building of the masjid in Medina, and of appointing for each one of the Muslims somebody who would be their brother, and the drawing up of the constitution, what is expected of a Muslim, and also in terms of the agreements with the other tribes in Mecca. So today we will look at discuss the coming of the family of the Prophet ﷺ to Medina, because they were still at this point in Mecca. So they remained in Mecca, and so now the Prophet ﷺ sends for his family to be brought to Medina. So once the Prophet ﷺ had built his house, he built a house for Sayyidina Aisha and a house for Sayyidina Sauda radiallahu ta'ala anhum. And Sayyidina Aisha's house is where it is today, where the Prophet ﷺ is buried. That was Sayyidina Aisha's house. And where we stand and we give salam, that place is Sayyidina Sauda's house. So they were adjacent to the masjid and next to each other for ease for the Prophet ﷺ. And in those times, houses were not as we know today, where you have multiple rooms and it's a 3-bedroom house and the like. It was just a hut with 1 or 2 rooms and a place to cook in the corner. So it was just 1 room, and when you have a place in the corner where you cook and you would sleep, and everything is done in that room. So it wasn't big, huge houses that we have today. So the Prophet ﷺ, he now calls for his daughters, Sayyidina Fatima, Zahra, and Sayyidina Kulthum, to be brought to Medina. And so the Prophet ﷺ's uncle Abbas, he prepares for them a camel for the journey, and he gives them this camel that they will ride and take to Medina from Mecca. And one of the mushrikeen, the kuffar, the Quraysh, Huwayrith ibn Nuqayd, he goaded the camel and he stood in front of it so that it throws off Sayyidina Fatima and Kulthum radiallahu ta'ala anhuma, and so that it throws them off, and the camel threw them off and they fell to the ground radiallahu ta'ala anhuma. And he was later killed at the Fath al-Makkah, at the conquering of Mecca. He was one of those that resisted and took arms, and he was killed. So looking at the Prophet ﷺ's family then, in terms of his children, that with Sayyidina Khadija he had 6 children, and then he had later on 1 child, Ibrahim, with Sayyidatuna Maria al-Qibtiyya. And so, but he had 6 with Sayyidina Khadija and 1 with Maria. And his first with Sayyidina Khadija, his youngest with Sayyidina Khadija was Abdullah, a boy, and Sayyidina Abdullah died when he was in his infancy, so he was still very young, and he died. Then the next youngest was Sayyidina Fatima Zahra radiallahu ta'ala anha, Abiha, that's what they called her, that she was the mother of her father, because she was the only one to outlive the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, whereas all the other children had passed away in the lifetime of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Sayyidina Fatima lived beyond that, and she became caring like a mother would of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that's how she took care of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so she was given the name Abiha, the mother of her father. And so she radiallahu ta'ala anha was born 18 years before Hijrah, so this would have been 5 years before prophecy, in the year that the Prophet ﷺ was involved in the rebuilding of the Kaaba. That's when she was born. and she died in the year 11 Hijri radiallahu ta'ala anha, as they say around the age of 29 years old. And we'll discuss her marriage as well to Sayyidina Ali karamallahu wajhu. But the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he once said to Sayyidina Fatima, he also said, because Sayyidina Fatima was, after the passing of all of his children, she became very beloved to him sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he had lost his wife and he had lost all his children sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and this was, Fatima was the only one left. So imagine somebody who loses all their children and how attached you would be to that one child that you have left. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Fatima bid'atun minni, Fatima is a piece of me, and that which angers her angers me radiallahu ta'ala anha. And he also said to Fatima once, he said, do you know why I've named you Fatima? And so she asked why, and so he said that Fatima, verily Allah has Fatamaha wa dhuriyataha anin nar, that Allah has prohibited, abstained Fatima and her children from the fire, and that's why he named her Fatima from the word Fatama. So now, after migration radiallahu ta'ala anha, that she was married off to Sayyidina Ali karamallahu wajhu, who was 21 years old, and they had children together. They had Sayyidina Hassan, Hussein, so 6 children: Sayyidina Hassan, Sayyidina Hussein, Muhsin, Zainab, Kulthum and Ruqayya. So we see that Sayyidina Fatima, 3 boys and 3 girls with Sayyidina Ali, and the 3 girls are named after her sisters, Kulthum, Ruqayya, Zainab, Kulthum and Ruqayya. And Ruqayya passed away when she was young, in infancy as well. In regards to Sayyidina Hassan, he was born in the year 3 Hijri, and then Hussein, who was younger, was born in the following year 4 Hijri. And both of these and all the grandchildren of the Prophet ﷺ were beloved to him, but as he knew ﷺ what would happen, what the future held for Sayyidina Hussein, that he hinted towards what would happen to him radiallahu ta'ala anhu, and to Sayyidina Hassan, and they were all beloved to him sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would walk past their house every day, and he would say, As-salat ya ahl al-bayt, it's time for prayer, O people of the family. And he once called all of them, Sayyidina Ali, Sayyidina Fatima and Hassan and Hussein, and he put his burda, his cloak around them, and they became known as people of the family, people of the cloak, Ahlul Kisa radiyallahu ta'ala anhum. And so Sayyidina Fatima, she and all his children had an upbringing which was where they were completely divorced from the dunya, and that was their upbringing, and that's the way that they were brought up before Islam and after Islam. That when he sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't like his children to be attached or have connected to anything from the dunya, and he would remind them of this sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Once Sayyidina Fatima, she asked, Sayyidina Ali said to ask the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam for a helper to help her around the house, because everybody else had a helper that would help, and Sayyidina Fatima didn't. And so Sayyidina Fatima goes and asks the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he says to her, should I give you something better? And look how her father dealt with this situation, that he didn't like this for his daughter. So he didn't say, no, you can't have that, or why do you want that, or ask questions. He said, should I give you something better than that? And so she's now inquisitive. Yes, what's better than that? So he says to her sallallahu alaihi wasallam, say Subhanallah 33 times, Alhamdulillah 33 times, and Allahu Akbar 34 times. And so he gave her something that was better than that, radiallahu ta'ala anha. Once Sayyidina Ali, he gifted her a gold necklace as a gift to Sayyidina Fatima, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam came in, and as he came in, he heard Fatima telling one of her friends that Ali had bought her this necklace, this gold necklace. And look at, she's joyed that she's, for the first time, she's holding something precious, this gold necklace. And so the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, would it please you to hear the people say that in the hands of the Prophet's daughter is a necklace from the fire, and not that she had done anything wrong, but this was something that the Prophet, this is gold, and the Prophet ﷺ had no love or connection to gold in any way, shape and form, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, and he didn't want that for his children, that they have this love or connection to gold. And so Fatima radiallahu ta'ala anha, when she heard this, immediately she went and sold the necklace, and with the money that she received from selling the necklace, she went and freed a slave radiallahu ta'ala anha. Who is Fatima Zahra? She is a piece of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so she would behave as the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would. And so as soon as she heard this, she went and sold the necklace and used that money to free a slave. May Allah be pleased with her. And so when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam heard this, that she had sold the necklace, he then said, praise to the one who saved Fatima from the fire, meaning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Another time, once her relationship with Sayyidina Ali, that she was once upset with Sayyidina Ali karamallahu wajhu, and so she says to Sayyidina Ali, while she was playing with Hassan, and she was singing, and so she says, bi abi shabihan bin nabi laysa shabihan bi Ali. So bi abi shabihan bin nabi laysa shabihan bi Ali. So that she says, by my father she resembles the Prophet, by my father he resembles the Prophet, talking about Hassan, he looks like the Prophet. Laysa shabihan bi Ali, and he doesn't look like Ali karamallahu wajhu. And so Sayyidina Ali is sitting there, and he says, Wallahi, you've not said anything that would ever offend me. I'm pleased that he looks like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this is the relationship that Sayyidina Ali and Sayyidina Fatima that they had, and that was Sayyidina Fatima, Sayyidina Ali was married to Sayyidina Fatima. He never married any other woman, radiallahu ta'ala anhum. And so Sayyidina Fatima passed away after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, 6 months after he passed away. And Sayyidina Ali mentions that after the passing of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, she never smiled, until one day that he came in and she was dressed up and she was smiling and she was happy. So he said, why are you dressed up and you're so happy? And he was pleased that his wife is so happy. And she said, today I will meet my father, radiallahu ta'ala anha. And she passed away on that day. So then we have Sayyidatuna Kulthum, who was born 19 years before the Hijrah, so 6 years before prophecy, so a year older than Fatima. Now Kulthum was married to Utayba bin Abi Lahab, but the marriage was never consummated. So it was her cousin, the son of Abu Lahab, that she was married to, but the marriage was never consummated. And after the Surah Tabbat Yada was revealed, that Abu Lahab told Utayba, his son, he said that he would never speak to him again unless he divorced Kulthum. And so he divorced her, listening to his father. And so her maternal brother Hind ibn Abi Hala, he asked the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, why did you separate Kulthum from Utayba? And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Allah did not allow me to marry her to a person who is not going to paradise. So Utayba, when he divorced Sayyidatuna Kulthum, he came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he spat in front of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then he divorced Sayyidatuna Kulthum in front of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And you can imagine how upsetting this was for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he did it to mock and to humiliate the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but he only humiliated himself. And so the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Allah cast him a dog from your dogs. And so when he was on a trip to Syria once, and as the people had camped and he was in his tent, a lion came in, and people were all sleeping, and the lion came in at night, and it went and to each person's head and smelt their heads until it came to Utayba, and it only attacked and ate Utayba. It didn't eat anybody else, and that was his ending. And so he died as a mushrik, as a kafir. And so she then marries Sayyidina Uthman in the year 3 Hijri, after Sayyidatuna Ruqayya passed away. So her sister Ruqayya, who we'll speak about now, she was married to Sayyidina Uthman. And after Ruqayya passed away, that's when Kulthum married Uthman radiallahu ta'ala anhum. And she had no children, Kulthum, and she died in the year 9 Hijri. Then we have the next daughter of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Ruqayya, and she was born 22 years before the Hijrah, so 9 years before prophecy, and she died in the 2nd year Hijri at 24 years old. And as we mentioned, Ruqayya was initially married to Utbah bin Abi Lahab, so the brother of Utayba, and both the sons of Abu Lahab. And again, the marriage wasn't consummated, but he divorced her, but he later did become Muslim at the Fath al-Makkah with his other brother Mu'attib, who also fought with the Prophet ﷺ after Fath al-Makkah. So now she marries Sayyidina Uthman, and this was 5 years after prophecy, that Sayyidatuna Ruqayya was married off to Uthman ibn Affan. And she, as we mentioned, she was one of those who migrated with Sayyidina Uthman to Abyssinia, and in Abyssinia she suffered a miscarriage, and then they returned to Abyssinia another time, and she gave birth to a son, Abdullah, there. And Abdullah, he died when he was 6 years old when they migrated to Medina, and she didn't have any further children after that, and her children had all passed away before her, radiallahu ta'ala anha. And then we have she died before Abdullah, her son, and then he passed away when he was 6 years old in Medina. So then we have Zainab radiallahu ta'ala anha, which is the next daughter of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and she was born 23 years before the Hijrah, so it's 10 years before prophecy, and she died in the year 8 Hijri at 31 years old. She was married to her maternal cousin Abu al-As ibn Rabi', whose mother was Hala bint Khuwaylid, the sister of Sayyidatuna Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha. So this was her maternal cousin Abu al-As, and she was married to him. And the Quraysh initially encouraged him to divorce Sayyidatuna Zainab, but he refused, and they said to him, "We'll give you any woman, divorce her." And so you can see that they were going around and trying to humiliate and mock the Prophet ﷺ. And so they wanted Abu al-As to divorce her, and they promised him any woman, and he refused. He said that he was not going to divorce her. So Sayyidatuna Zainab, she didn't make the hijrah with the Muslims when they migrated to Medina initially, until Abu As, he was captured, because he was one of those who came out at Badr to fight with the mushrikeen, even though he was hesitant, but he came out to fight, and he was captured. And so when he was captured, he was ransomed, and Sayyidina Zainab, she said she sent her wedding gift, which was from her mother, which was her necklace, as a ransom. And when the Prophet ﷺ, he saw this, he began to weep, because it reminded him of Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha. So the Prophet ﷺ refused to take it, the ransom, and he agreed to send Abu al-As back to Medina, free him, but this with the condition that he sends Zainab to Medina. And so a month later, when Abu al-As is back in Mecca, he prepares to send Zainab to fulfill his promise and send Zainab to Medina. And Sayyidina Zayd went to Mecca to collect Sayyidina Zainab. And as she entered her hawdaj, which is the carrier that sits on top of the camel which the ladies travel in, her brother-in-law Kinana took the camel, held the camel, and he took her to Zayd. So when the Quraysh, they saw this, that Kinana was taking her to Zayd, that they thought it was the Prophet ﷺ flaunting and showing off. And now, because they had just won the Battle of Badr, and Abu al-As was a prisoner and he sent him back, and now the Prophet ﷺ is showing off. So a man called Habbar ibn Aswad, he came and he stopped the camel and he threatened the camel and Zaynab with his lance, and he pushed her. And so she fell radiallahu ta'ala anha from the camel, from the hodaj. And Abu Sufyan was there and he saw this and he stopped it and he scolded Habbar. That he said to him that, don't bring us any further shame. We've already lost the Battle of Badr, but this is not the way that we would act. The Arabs were still people of chivalry, and they wanted to have, as we mentioned, they looked up to these virtues, and so they were people of honor and being of chivalry. And so Abu Sufyan scolded Habbar for doing such. He said, don't bring us any further shame by harming a woman and who's innocent, who's not done anything to you, and that we will not stop a man from his daughter just to take revenge with him. That's not what we're going to do. So this is what Abu Sufyan said to Habbar, but he also scolded Kinana and told off Kinana that he was wrong for doing it in broad daylight in front of everybody, because it would stir up people's emotions, and that he should have not. This is not the manner that he should do it. And so Kinana took Zaynab back, and then a few nights later he took her to Zayd. And it's reported that Sayyidatuna Zaynab, that when she fell from the camel, this caused her to have a miscarriage, radiallahu ta'ala anha. Then Abu al-As, he became Muslim later on, and this was 4 years later, where he was travelling in a caravan which was attacked by Muslims, because the caravan was carrying merchandise that belonged to the Muslims from Mecca, and so the Muslims attacked this caravan, and Abu al-As he escaped, and he entered into Medina in secrecy, and he went to seek Sayyidatuna Zaynab's protection. And then she took him to the Prophet ﷺ, and the Muslims were given a choice to return his belongings if they wanted to. And so then he was called to Islam. The Prophet ﷺ called him to Islam, but he said that he doesn't want his Islam to start by him breaking people's trust, that he was carrying goods of other people, and that he doesn't want to start his Islam upon that, and that people would think that he's only become Muslim so he can keep their goods. So he says, let me go, and I want to return these goods, and then I'll come back. So he returns to Mecca, he returns people's goods, and he becomes Muslim there in Mecca. And he says to the people, the Quraysh there, that I've only now delayed becoming Muslim because I didn't want you to think that I wanted to keep your belongings, and that's why I became Muslim and remained in Medina. And so he returned to Medina, radiallahu ta'ala anhu. So they only lived now, Sayyidatuna Zaynab and Abu al-As, for a year, until Zaynab passes away, radiallahu ta'ala anha. And they have a daughter called Umama, and also a son called Ali. But Ali died when he was young. But Umama was very beloved to the Prophet ﷺ, and she grew up to be a woman. And the Prophet ﷺ deeply loved her, and he once came to the masjid with Umama on his shoulders, and he prayed whilst he was holding her, radiallahu ta'ala. So he stood up and he prayed, and he held Umama, and then he would go into ruku, and he would place her down and do his sajda, and then when he was coming to stand back up again, he would pick her up and carry her again, radiallahu ta'ala anha. And so he was always carrying and playing with Umama. Once he was sent gifts by some kings, and from amongst the gifts was a necklace, and it was this beautiful necklace, Sayyidina Aisha mentions. And so the Prophet ﷺ says that I will give this to the person who's the most beloved to me, the dearest person to me. And so everyone thought it was going to be Sayyidina Aisha that he's going to give it to, but he gave it to Umama radiallahu ta'ala anha. And so Umama, she marries Sayyidina Ali after Sayyidina Fatima passes away. So Sayyidina Fatima passes away, and she says to Sayyidina Ali that he should marry Umama because she is the most loving towards her children, to Hassan and Hussein, and that they were still very young, and Umama was very loving and caring towards them, like a mother. So she wanted Sayyidina Ali to marry Umama, and Umama agreed, and so they were married. And so she had one son with Sayyidina Ali called Muhammad, who died young. And so when Sayyidina Ali passed away, she remarried Mughira bin Nawfil radiallahu ta'ala anhu. So that's just some about the children of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam also had a son, Qasim, who was the eldest, who again died when he was young, and that's where he was given the name Abu Qasim. And then he had later, we will speak about, he had a child with Maria al-Qibtiyya, Sayyidina Ibrahim radiallahu ta'ala anhum. So now we see that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he returns, he brings his family to Medina to live with him. And at the same time, Abu Bakr's family were still in Medina as well. They were brought along with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's family to Medina. So Fatima, Kulthum, Sayyidina Sauda, Usama bin Zayd, Ayman, Barakah, who had always been with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam from when he was born, and that Ayman radiallahu ta'ala anha, that she was there when Sayyidina Amina passed away, and she remained with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam throughout his life. And so she remained in Medina and then was brought with the family. She was considered from the family of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then Abdullah bin Abi Bakr and came with Abu Bakr's family, his wife and his children. May Allah be pleased with them all, inshallah. So we'll stop there, and tomorrow we will look at the Battle of Badr, inshallah, which fell on the 17th of Ramadan. So that will be this Sunday night, I believe, and Monday being the day of Badr, being the 17th of Ramadan, inshallah. So we'll look at the Battle of Badr, inshallah. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ya Rabbana اعترفنا بأننا اقترفنا وأننا أسرفنا على لظى أشرفنا فتوب علينا توبة تغسل كل هوبة واسترنا العورات وآمن رؤاتي واغفر لوالدينا ربي ومولودينا وأهلي والإخواني وسائر الخلان وكل ذي محبة أو جيرة وصحبة والمسلمين أجمع. آمين. ربي اسمع فضلا وجود منا لا باكتساب منا بالمصطفى رسولي نحظى بكل سولي بالمصطفى رسولي نحظى بكل سولي بالمصطفى رسولي نحظى بكل سولي وصلى الله وسلم ربي عليه أدى الهبي وآله وصحبي إدادة أشي صحبي والحمد لله في البدء والتناهي. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين في كل لحظة أبدا عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك عليه وعلى آله وصحبه. الفاتحة.